Get the gaming time machine running and set the dials back a few years because we are yet to dive into the golden era of the NES and SNES. Welcome back to Marvelous Gaming, and today we are talking about a time when superhero games were all the rage, the 80s and 90s. If you are ready for a nostalgia trip, buckle up because we are about to explore the top 30 superhero games that define a generation. From the dark streets of Gotham in Batman the video game to the cosmic battles in Silver Surfer, these games brought our comic book fantasies to life. Remember duking it out with the Sinister Six in SpiderMan Return of the Sinister Six? Or how about teaming with your favorite mutants in XMen Mutant Apocalypse? These games weren't just fun, they were our first steps into the universes we loved. So, are you ready to relive the battles against Magneto, Lex Luthor and the Joker? Or maybe you want to revisit those epic crossovers like Marvel superheroes in War of the Gems. Without much further ado, let's check out these classics and see how these vintage gems stack up in the world of superhero gaming.
Batman, the video game, from Sunsoft.
Batman the video game from 1989. Batman the video game was a total blast, inspired by the 1989 movie. This game had it all. 5 exciting levels, ending in a boss fight with a Joker in Gotham's bell tower. What sets this game apart? It has cool mechanics, especially the wall jump, a big deal back then. Batman had these neat gadgets too, like batarangs and batpoons. The levels were a trip through Gotham, from the streets to the sewers, and each had its own vibe. The bad guys were classic DC villains, but it's the bosses like Killer Moth and the Joker that really upped the ante. Fun fact, the game's early version was way different. No Joker boss fight, can you imagine? Critics dug it for its moody graphics and tough bosses, though some said it could get a bit samey after a while. It nailed the Best Movie to Game award in '89, and even now it is seen as one of the NES's coolest games, especially for Batman fans. So there you have it, Batman the video game, a true retro classic from the NES era. Captain America and the Avengers, 1991. Captain America and the Avengers on the NES wasn't just any beat-em-up arcade game. It was a side-scrolling, action-packed adventure developed by Data East in the early 90s. It has got a different flavor from its Sega, Genesis, Mega Drive, and SNES counterparts. In the NES version, you are either Captain America or Hawkeye, and your mission is to rescue Vision and Iron Man from the Mandarin, then go head-to-head with the Red Skull. This game was all about classic side-scrolling action, but with a superhero twist. The gameplay was cool. You would get to go on a face-off against a bunch of supervillains like Claw, the Living Laser, and even the Juggernaut. Each character had their own style. Cap and Hawkeye could do hand-to-hand combat, toss stuff around, and pull off special ranged attacks. And yeah, those ranged attacks were as cool as they sound. Cap throwing his shield and Hawkeye firing arrows. Most levels were your typical side-scroller fights, but occasionally you'd get to fly. Iron Man and Vision could fly solo, while Cap and Hawkeye had to use flying machines. The game even threw in some help from other Avengers through special power-ups. To sum it up, it was like a mini Marvel universe in your hands. If you were into the whole saving the world as a superhero thing, this game was totally up your alley. SpiderMan, The Return of the Sinister Six, 1992. Swing into action with SpiderMan, Return of the Sinister Six from 1992. This game, developed by Bits Studios and published by Acclaim Entertainment under the LJN banner, brought a classic Spider-Man comic storyline to the NES. And for those who branched out, there were also versions for the Master System and Game Gear. The plot is straight out of the comics. Doc Ock and the Sinister Six are on a world domination spree, and it's up to Spidey to stop them. Classic superhero stuff, right? You get to control Spider-Man through 6 levels, each ending with a showdown against the Sinister Six member, Electro, Sandman, Mysterio, Vulture, Hobgoblin, and of course, Dr. Octopus. Spider-Man's got his classic moves: jumping, punching, kicking, and slinging webs. The levels are mostly about that straightforward side-scrolling action, but sometimes you need to hunt for items like keys or detonators. The NES version ups the challenge, with Spider-Man having just one life and 1 continue, and no power-up icons to regain energy. Beat some baddies though, and you can replenish Spidey's power bar. The Master System and Game Gear versions dialed down the difficulty a bit with easier item replacements and less tough bosses. However, the Game Gear's smaller screen made it a bit trickier to dodge those incoming projectiles. Nintendo Power gave the NES version props for its graphics, but wasn't thrilled about the play control, noting that sometimes your punches would just swing into thin air. Ah, the quirks of retro gaming. Batman Returns, SNES. Batman Returns on the SNES? Absolutely out of the world. This 1993 beat-em-up game was all about the Dark Knight kicking butt Konami style, based on the movie. It's a total nostalgia trip with 7 levels, each ripped right from the film. The gameplay is a classic side-scroller action here, but you are Batman fighting through Gotham Plaza, tackling street thugs, and even having a rooftop showdown with Catwoman. The vibe? Think Final Fight, but with Batman's cool gadgets like batarangs. What could be better? One of the best parts, driving the Batmobile in Scene 5, mowing down Penguin's goons with a machine gun. The game mixes up 2D platforming and 3D style levels, keeping things fresh and challenging. Critics loved it back in the day. GamePro's Scary Larry threw down a perfect score, mainly for the game's killer graphics and animations. Super Gamer was also stoked, giving it a 90% for its top-notch soundtrack and gameplay. They even called it one of the best beat-em-ups around. So yeah, Batman Returns on the SNES was an experience. We got to experience movie magic as well as old-school gaming. For Batman fans, it was the bomb. Spider-Man and Venom, Maximum Carnage. Back in 1994, Marvel Comics went all in with Maximum Carnage, a wild 14-part crossover in the Spider-Man world. Picture this. Spider-Man and Venom team up with a bunch of other superheroes to take on the unhinged Carnage and his villainous crew. Here's the scoop. Carnage, that's Cletus Cassidy, busts out of jail with a new symbiote he made from his own blood. He and his cellmate Shrek start tearing through New York, picking up some sinister sidekicks like Doppelganger and Demogoblin. Carnage thinks he's the boss, but Shrek's really calling the shots. Things get really messy. The hero squad, including big names like Captain America and Black Cat, are torn between Venom's end Carnage at any cost attitude and Spider-Man's no violence policy. Meanwhile, Shriek's messing with everyone's heads, turning New York City into chaos. In the climax, the heroes use this Rand Corporation gadget that blasts the baddies with good vibes, messing them up big time. Carnage tries to fake his own death, but ends up in a brutal showdown with Venom. Spoiler, Carnage gets zapped and caught. This game was a massive deal, sprawling across several Spider-Man titles. They even bundled it into a few collections for anyone who missed the action. It wasn't just a comic run, it was a full-blown Spider-Verse event that had fans buzzing. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, 1990. Cowabunga, dudes! Let's talk about the classic 1989 arcade game Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a total smash hit from Konami. Remember when everyone was crazy about the Ninja Turtles? This game was right there during the peak of Turtle Mania. You could pick your favorite turtle, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello or Raphael. Each had their own style. Leo was balanced, Mickey and Raph were fast and fierce, and Donnie had that awesome reach. The game lets up to 4 players jump in for some shell-kicking action. You would go on a mission to rescue April and Splinter, taking on Shredder and his goons. The gameplay was all about that 8-way joystick action, jumping and attacking with your chosen turtle's weapon. Plus, you could pull off some rad special moves like throwing foot soldiers or doing a sweeping jump attack. The levels were packed with stuff to smash and foot soldiers in different colors, each with their own attack style. And get this, in the Cowabunga collection, they added some sweet enhancements like level select, God mode, and even a nightmare mode for an extra challenge. This game wasn't just a co-in-op, it was a cultural phenomenon, riding the wave of the Ninja Turtles craze. From its 4-player arcade madness to its catchy theme song, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was an unforgettable part of our arcade memories. Marvel superheroes in War of the Gems. Ever wanted to snag Infinity Gems with your favorite Marvel heroes? Marvel Superheroes in War of the Gems is a 1996 SNES gem by Capcom, which made that dream a reality. Based on the Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity War comics, this game had us teaming up with Adam Warlock to keep those shiny gems away from the baddies. This, however, is not your usual arcade port. It is more like a beat-em-up platformer with a taste of Final Fight and XMen Mutant Apocalypse. Fast forward to 2020, and it even got a re-release in a home arcade cabinet from Arcade 1-Up, alongside some other Marvel and Capcom classics. You play through various global and cosmic locales as Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Wolverine, or Hulk. Each hero has a separate health bar that carries over between missions. You can heal by grabbing items or using what you find on your journey. If a hero falls, you've got to revive them with the right item. And those Infinity Gems, they are not just for show. They give you buffs like more power, speed, or health. The playable characters are all unique. Cap's balanced, Iron Man's fast and projectile happy, Hulk's the powerhouse, Spidey's quick but fragile, and Wolverine is a jack of all trades. You will face doppelgangers of some heroes and villains like Blackheart, Nebula, and of course Thanos. This really was an epic Marvel adventure that let you step into the boots of Earth's mightiest heroes. Wolverine Adamantium Rage. In '94, Wolverine Adamantium Rage slashed its way onto the SNES. Developed by Teeny Weeny Games for SNES, this version brought its own flair to the Wolverine saga. Story-wise, it kicks off with Wolverine getting a mysterious tip about his past. This leads him on a wild ride from Canada to Japan, tangling with foes like Lady Deathstrike, Bloodscream, and the sinister Great Beast. It's a classic Wolverine adventure filled with battles, betrayal, and a trip back to the X-Mansion. The gameplay is pretty groundbreaking, especially with its recharging health system, a nod to Wolverine's healing factor. On the SNES, you've got to take down a set number of enemies to advance. It also requires passwords for level access. SNES players get to scale walls and ceilings with Wolverine's claws and to make huge leaps. Each level ends with a boss fight, and these vary between versions. SNES version is also more about battling enemies to progress. This game really hit the mark in bringing our favorite mutant to life in a cool, one-of-a-kind style that's just a blast to play. The Death and Return of Superman. In 1994, Sunsoft brought the epic The Death of Superman storyline to life on the SNES with Death and Return of Superman. This side-scrolling beat-em-up game lets players step into the capes of Superman, Superboy, Steel, Cyborg Superman, and the Eradicator, each taking on Doomsday and various other DC villains. In the SNES version, you move in all directions, taking on waves of enemies before progressing. The characters, while different in appearance, share similar abilities like melee attacks, throws, and powerful ultimate attacks. Each Superman also has unique flight capabilities, which you can use to dodge obstacles or engage flying enemies. The plot kicks off with a power failure in Metropolis, leading to a showdown with Doomsday. After Superman's death, 4 new Supermen emerge, each with their own part of the story. You will battle through Metropolis, confront the cyborg Superman, and ultimately bring back the real Superman. One cool feature is that the characters' health bars and abilities vary slightly, adding some diversity to the gameplay. Plus, the game sticks to the comic book plot pretty closely, making it a treat for DC fans. The Death and Return of Superman was a hit for comic book and beat-em-up fans alike, offering a chance to experience one of Superman's most iconic stories in a hands-on way. It was a little bit of everything from action to adventure and the classic Superman lore. The Adventures of Batman and Robin. Alright, coming up next is The Adventures of Batman and Robin. So, back in '94, this game hit the SNES and it was like stepping right into the Batman animated series. Konami was the brains behind this one and they totally nailed the look and feel of Gotham City. Playing as Batman in this 2D platformer was a total butt-kicking experience. You had 8 levels to beat, each with its own set of baddies and puzzles, and the gear, classic Batman, batarangs, grappling hooks, you name it. Plus some levels had you whipping out gadgets like X-ray glasses and gas masks, which was pretty cool. The graphics were spot on too, capturing that Art Deco vibe from the TV show. It wasn't just about brawling, you had to think about when to dodge and block, and which gadget to use and when. In short, playing this game, the SNES was like a mini Batman adventure on your console. For anyone who loved the show, or just loved a good old platformer with a superhero twist, this game was the real deal. Spawn. Get ready to look back into the gritty Spawn universe. Developed by Ukiyote and released by Acclaim and Sony, it puts you in the spooky boots of Al Simmons, aka Spawn, on a mission to save some kids. So you are Spawn here. You get to run, duck, jump and punch your way through 17 levels, but the real fun was using Spawn's special powers. Think firing projectiles and teleporting. These cool moves drained his necroplasm, and if you ran out, well, it was curtains for Spawn's soul. The game had this super cool vibe with critics. They were digging the graphics as well as the gameplay, but well, it wasn't exactly breaking new ground. You got unlimited continues and passwords to keep the action going, but the twist was your health didn't refresh with those passwords. Story-wise, it's classic Spawn stuff. Al Simmons, the once secret agent turned undead, deals with a devilish Malebolgia for some power with a catch. Then there is the Mad One, this bad guy who's nabbed 13 kids, including Spawn's stepdaughter, and it's up to Spawn to save them and his own soul. In short, Todd McFarlane's Spawn, the video game, was a cool dark trip into the world of Spawn. It was like stepping into a comic book, and for fans of the anti-hero, it was a pretty sweet deal. The Swamp Thing, 1992. The Swamp Thing from 1992 is a game that brought the cool DC Comics superhero right into our living rooms. This game, based on the animated series, was all about getting into the swampy spirit of things on both NES and Game Boy. The NES version had this rad intro with Swamp Thing's origin story, just like in the 91 animated series. Playing as the Swamp Thing meant going on a wild ride through Louisiana swamps and beyond. You got to punch out baddies and sling sludge balls. How awesome is that? Each stage was a new adventure, from spooky graveyards to buzzing chemical factories, and the bosses were straight out of a comic book, like Dr. Demo and the Wicked Weed Killer. Sure, the game was challenging, but that just added to the fun. It was like stepping into a Swamp Thing comic, with all the action and adventure you would expect from a superhero game. For Swamp Thing fans, this game was a unique way to connect with their favorite green hero. The Punisher. Back in 1990, The Punisher hit the NES, giving us a unique rail shooter experience with one of Marvel's toughest anti-heroes. Developed by Beam Software and released by LJN, this game was a standout for its genre on the system. In this game, you get to explore deep into an altered version of his story where he is a former detective, a twist from his usual Marine background. The gameplay is also pretty cool. You are looking over the Punisher's shoulder, roaming through New York City and taking down thugs and supervillains like Hitman and Jigsaw. And the big bad at the end? None other than the Kingpin himself. The game amps up the action with a bunch of power-ups. I repeat the line. You could grab extra ammo, medkits, Kevlar for protection, and some heavy artillery like bazookas and machine guns. I mean, who wouldn't want to go on a rampage against baddies with that kind of firepower? This one on the NES was like stepping into a comic book, bringing the dark, gritty world of the Punisher to life with some solid shooting action. For fans of Marvel and rail shooters, this game was a real treat, letting you take on the role of one of the toughest characters in the Marvel universe. SpiderMan, XMen, Arcade's Revenge. SpiderMan and the X-Men in Arcade's Revenge in 1992 swung onto the Super NES, thanks to LJN. It also made its way to the Genesis, Game Gear and Game Boy. This game was a Marvel fan's dream, featuring Spider-Man teaming up with the X-Men to take on the villainous Arcade in his twisted murder world. Here's the lowdown. Spider-Man zipping through the city when he notices Cyclops, Storm, Wolverine and Gambit have all been nabbed. He traces them back to Arcade, and that's where the action kicks off. The first stage has you playing as Spidey, deactivating security eyes to get inside. Then the real fun begins in Murder World, a virtual death trap designed by Arcade. The goal? You've got to ace each Marvel hero's 2 challenges to reach the final showdown with Arcade. You can pick any character's first event, but their second event only unlocks after you beat the first. Oh, and get this, all the heroes share the same lives, so if one hero takes a hit, they all feel the pain. The game's release capitalized on the X-Men animated series' popularity and LJN's success with previous superhero games. This one was more than just a game. It was a comic book come to life, with all the thrills and challenges of taking on one of the trickiest villains in the Marvel Universe. Captain Commando. So next up is Captain Commando. This guy's got a backstory cooler than most. Before he even got his own game, Capcom was using him to jazz up their NES game packaging and manuals from 86 to 89. We are talking about titles like 1942, Ghosts and Goblins and Mega Man, all part of the Captain Commando Challenge series. Each game came with this awesome drawing of Captain Commando decked out as a space hero, ray guns and all, plus these snazzy C medallions. And the manuals, they had these special messages from the captain himself, like a virtual high five for picking up a Capcom game. The neatest bit was in Section Z's manual, where you, the player, actually teamed up with Captain Commando. Fast forward to 1989 and our captain got a fresh look for games like Strider and Mega Man 2. The box art featured him in a pilot suit, chilling with an alien chimp, all with this slick airbrushed style. Captain Commando was there, keeping us in the loop about all the latest and greatest from Capcom. Now, when it comes to the Captain Commando game itself, it's this wild ride set in a futuristic metro city. Yeah, the same place as Final Fight. The year is 2026 and it's crime central. Captain Commando and his squad roll up their sleeves to clean up the streets, taking on these super-powered villains led by the nasty Scumocide or Genocide in Japan. So yeah, playing this on the NES was more than just a gaming session. It was like jumping into parts of Capcom's bigger universe. Captain Commando was really a symbol of adventure and heroics that Capcom was bringing to gamers everywhere. TMNT 4 Turtles in Time. Talk about a throwback. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 Turtles in Time on the SNES was like a radical blast from the past. This game kept the turtle vibe going strong after the first 3 NES games, even though the Manhattan Project never hit the PAL region. The SNES version had its own flavor compared to the arcade. It missed a few bells and whistles like some animations, but it totally rocked with the SNES's Mode 7 in the Neon Knight Riders level, giving us a cool behind the turtle view. And nope, Mode 7 wasn't about tossing those foot soldiers at the screen, even though everyone thinks so. The tunes were different too. We got an instrumental version of the classic cartoon theme instead of the arcade's pizza power. Gameplay got a bit of a remix as well. They turned sewer surfing and Neon Knight Riders into bonus levels and added a gnarly new Technodrome stage with Shredder hanging out in a tank. The boss lineup got spiced up with characters like the Rat King and Slash, and Super Shredder stepped up for the final showdown. There were some cool extra modes like time trials and a 2-player fight mode. Plus, each turtle had their own thing going on in terms of speed and strength. The best part? You could now chuck enemies off-screen on purpose, which was super handy at the Technodrome level. All in all, Turtles in Time on the SNES was more than just a trip down memory lane. It was a fresh, fun take on the Turtle saga. For anyone who dug the Turtles, this game was totally tubular. Batman Return of the Joker 1991. Batman Return of the Joker on the NES in 91 was a total game changer from Sunsoft. Ditching the 1989 movie vibe, this game was all about the comic book Batman, although it did throw in the Batmobile and Batwing from the movie for good measure. There was even a remake called Batman Revenge of the Joker on the Sega Genesis and an SNES version that never officially hit the shelves but still made its way to the internet later. The gameplay? Classic NES action. Batman's on a mission across Gotham to stop the Joker, who's up to no good with stolen metals for missile explosives. You've got 7 stages, each with its own mini-levels and bosses, like the Ace Ranger and of course the Joker himself. This game was a run-and-gun platformer with a twist. Batman's got this wrist projector and you can switch up ammo types by grabbing different icons. There's the crossbow C icon, the B for batarangs that track enemies, N for sonic neutralizers, and S for shield stars that shoot darts in 3 directions. Batman could slide to dodge an attack, super cool against certain enemies, and even go invincible for a bit if he collected enough energy capsules. To sum it up, it was an NES classic that brought the Dark Knight to life in a way that was both true to the comics and super fun to play. For Batman fans and NES lovers, this game was a must-play. Silver Surfer 1990. In 1990, the Silver Surfer game hit the NES, and let me tell you, it was known for 2 things: being insanely tough and having some killer music. Developed by Software Creations and published by Arcadia Systems, this game brought the Marvel Comics character to life in a scrolling shoot-'em-up that was not for the faint of heart. You play as the Silver Surfer, gliding through levels that switch between side-scrolling and overhead views. Each stage is split into sections with mini-bosses at the end of each. The screen only stops moving when you're up against these mini-bosses or the main supervillains like Reptile and Mephisto. After beating the initial levels, Galactus sends you on a final mission to grab a cosmic device from a mysterious villain. Spoiler: the final boss isn't from the comics but is rumored to be Mr. Sinister from the X-Men. Once you beat him, you secure the cosmic device and keep it from falling into the wrong hands. The game's got a cool password feature for upgrades like invincibility, and you can pick the order you play the levels, kind of like Mega Man. You are armed with silver pellets and can grab power-ups to beef up your shots or stock screen-clearing bombs. But here is the catch: if you lose a life, you lose all your upgrades, and you've got to start from the scratch. This game was notorious for its difficulty, and that just added to the satisfaction of beating it. For NES gamers looking for a serious challenge and some epic tunes, this one was the game to play. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on the SNES was like jumping straight into the first season of the TV show, but it definitely split opinions when it hit the scene. This side-scrolling action game has 7 stages, mixing up gameplay styles to keep things fresh. The folks over at Electronic Gaming Monthly weren't super thrilled with it, giving it a 6.5 out of 10. They thought the animation was lacking and the level design kind of dull, and they flagged it as way too easy for the gaming pros. They did like the character selection feature, but felt like even die-hard Power Ranger fans would get bored pretty quickly. On the other hand, Nintendo Magazine System rated it a solid 77. They found it mighty tough and dug the energetic vibe that matched the TV show. They praised the game for fluid controls, cool animations, and making each ranger feel unique with signature moves. One reviewer even tipped the hat to Bandai for trying to do something special, calling the result pretty cool, while another flagged it as unoriginal. So if you were all about Morphin time and loved the Rangers, this game was a fun dive into their world, even if it did not push the envelope in gaming. The Incredible Hulk. So, in 1994, the Incredible Hulk game rolled out on a bunch of consoles and it was pretty wild. Probe Software whipped it up, and US Gold sent it out into the world, making it all about smashing and bashing in true Hulk style. Here's the deal with the gameplay. You are the Hulk, of course, and you get to do all the Hulk things. Smashing, bashing, and even switching to Bruce Banner to squeeze into places the Hulk can't fit. Your Hulk power runs on this thing called Gamma, and if it gets too low, you're back to being plain old Bruce, with just a gun and a couple of shots. The game spread out over 5 levels, loaded with these Gamma capsules to keep your Hulk meter up. Snag a mega capsule and boom, you're in Hulk out mode, basically bulldozing through everything. You are up against the leader and his crew, including tough guys like Rhino and Abomination. Depending on how tough you play, the ending changes, from the leader just laughing at Hulk to Hulk smashing his way out of an exploding fortress. So for the ones who got an adrenaline rush with Hulk smashing stuff, this game was a pretty fun ride. Justice League Task Force. Justice League Task Force hit the SNES and Genesis in 1995, marking an exciting moment for superhero game fans. Produced by Sunsoft and distributed by Acclaim, this game has a unique development story. Blizzard Entertainment co-developed the SNES version, while Condor Incorporated, later Blizzard North, handled the Genesis version. The game is a competitive fighting adventure, starring iconic DC comic characters like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, The Flash, and Aquaman. Initially, there were plans to include Martian Manhunter, Fire, and the villain Shrapnel, but they got the boot due to memory constraints. The storyline? Classic comic book drama. Darkseid attacks Earth, leveling a military base. Players pick their favorite Justice League hero to unravel this mystery. But here's the twist. As you track down fellow League members for clues, they attack you. It turns out these are android duplicates. After a series of battles against these fakes and villains like Cheetah and Despero, the heroes face their own duplicates and then the big bad himself, Darkseid. Victory means freeing the real League members and restoring the destroyed military base. It's a nostalgic journey through the mid-90s superhero gaming, capturing the essence of what made those early comic book games so appealing. XMen Mutant Apocalypse. Here we have XMen in Capcom's 1994 SNES classic, XMen Mutant Apocalypse. This action-packed game is all about guiding Beast, Cyclops, Gambit, Psylocke, and Wolverine through their unique missions against the backdrop of the Genosha Island crisis. Each hero packs a punch with their own cool moves. Beast's brute strength, Cyclops' eye beams, Gambit's energy-charged objects, Psylocke's psychic knife, and Wolverine's razor-sharp claws. Sans healing factor here, sorry fans. The gameplay is pretty slick. You kick off with individual levels for each X-Man, then mix it up by choosing who tackles the next stages. Your goal? Foil Magneto's grand plan on his Avalon space station. Expect to face off against big baddies like Queen Brood, Tusk, Apocalypse, and of course Magneto. It's not just punch and kick, you have got to think a bit too. The game throws health boosts and extra lives your way, and grabbing these X icons scores you a life up. After clearing the first 5 stages, snag a password to keep your progress safe. Critics gave it a thumbs up for its true-to-comics feel and engaging gameplay. X-Men Mutant Apocalypse is a nostalgic gem for anyone who loves a good superhero throwdown. Boogerman, a pick-and-flick adventure. Now coming in hot with the next in line, Boogerman, a pick-and-flick adventure that was released on SNES in 1995. This 2D platformer from Interplay Productions is anything but your usual superhero game. Here's the deal. Professor Stinkbaum's working on a Zap-O-Matic machine to teleport pollution to Dimension Excrement. Enter Snotty Ragsdale, an eccentric millionaire who, after a pepper-induced mega sneeze, transforms into his alter ego, Boogerman. A giant arm swipes the machine's power source and Boogerman dives into a portal to chase the thief. The gameplay? Pure goofy side-scrolling. Boogerman uses burps, farts, and boogers, yes you heard that right, as ammo. With over 20 levels, each featuring unique puzzles and enemies, plus a final boss level, there's plenty to keep you entertained. Post-boss battle, enjoy a fun sandbox credits scene where you can fly fart with unlimited fuel, a feature not available in the regular game. Boogerman's health is indicated by his cape's color. It turns from red to yellow when he's hurt, and a yellow cape hit means losing a life. You can pick up extra capes to heal. The game also features huts that act as checkpoints. This was perfect for anyone who enjoys a side of silliness with their platforming action. The Uncanny X-Men from 1989. Ready for another blast from the past? Check out The Uncanny X-Men for the NES, released in 1989 by LJN. It's a throwback to the classic X-Men comics and closely mirrors the lineup from the 1989 animated pilot X-Men: Pride of the X-Men. This game has a bit of mystery around it as it was developed by an external studio that remains undisclosed, probably Japanese studios, Both or Pixel. It's one of the last games under the Interactive Video Games label before LJN joined forces with Acclaim Entertainment. In this action-packed game, you get to control X-Men favorites like Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Iceman. Each has unique powers perfect for different missions. You can play solo with an AI ally or team up with a friend. The missions? They range from street fights in the future city to battling through a living starship. Wolverine and friends punch their way through while Cyclops and co fire off projectiles. Nightcrawler can even walk through walls and Storm can fly. Your mission? Fight through levels, beat bosses like Sabretooth and Magneto, and race back to the start before a bomb explodes. Plus, there is a secret 6th mission to battle Magneto, unlocked with a special code partially hidden on the game's cartridge label. With unlimited attacks and energy-draining special moves, The Uncanny X-Men is a nostalgic gem for NES fans and X-Men enthusiasts. It's a game that takes you right back to the roots of superhero gaming. Superman from 1987. Take a fight with the Man of Steel in Superman, a 1987 NES game by Kemco that brings the DC Comics superhero to life. The game had a unique twist in its soundtrack. The Japanese version featured music from the 1978 Superman film, while the US version swapped it with tunes from Kemco's RPG Indora no Hikari. In this game, you are on a mission to save Metropolis from Lex Luthor and a gang of Kryptonian criminals. The gameplay is a cool mix of overhead city maps and classic side-scrolling action. As Superman, you've got a super power bar and can grab items to use special abilities like X-ray vision to spot hidden enemies, super flight, super spin, heat vision, and 2 types of super breath to freeze foes. There is a quirky twist here. Superman's X-ray vision can't see through buildings because, according to the game's lore, Lex Luthor lined them all with lead. Besides these powers, Superman can jump and punch his way through trouble. Starting as Clark Kent, you need to find phone booths to change into Superman, but watch out, too much damage and you're back to being Clark. Even entering the Daily Planet building automatically changes you back. The game is structured into chapters, each ending with a boss fight. Beat the boss and you're rewarded with a Daily Planet front page celebrating your victory. The climax includes battles against Lex Luthor and 3 Kryptonian villains, Ursa, Non, and General Zod, at the game's version of the Statue of Liberty. Wildcats SNES. You guys remember Wildcats from Jim Lee's comics and that Saturday morning cartoon? Well, they made a game about them and it's pretty awesome. You get to play as Spartan, the cyborg leader dude, Maul. He is a massive tank, and Warblade, the guy whose hands turn into all sorts of cool weapons. The game is like a superhero dream team scenario. You've got to use each other's powers together to beat the levels, which adds a nice twist to the usual smash everything in sight strategy. And the graphics, they are straight out of a comic book. Really cool and super detailed, making you feel like you're right in the middle of the action. It's not just about bashing baddies. You need to think about how to use the hero's powers together, which makes it a bit more interesting than just mashing buttons. If you are into superheroes and loved the Wildcats, this game is like stepping into their world and leading the charge against the bad guys. Totally worth checking out for some nostalgic kicks and superhero action. Wolverine, 1991. Get ready to slash your way through trouble in Wolverine, a 1991 NES game by Software Creations and published by LJN. Based on the tough-as-nails Marvel comic superhero and X-Men member, this game puts you right in Wolverine's boots. Here is the deal. Wolverine has been nabbed by his arch-enemies Magneto and Sabretooth and dumped on a deserted island. It's all about survival, facing deadly enemies and traps, and ultimately going claw to claw with Magneto and Sabretooth. Gameplay-wise, you are Wolverine trying to escape this massive island. You'll jump, duck, punch, and kick your way through various stages. And the claws, oh, they are there. To recharge, Wolverine chows down on hamburgers and sips soft drinks. Not your typical superhero diet, but hey, it works. There is a twist. Snag special icons and other X-Men like Jubilee, Havoc, and Psylocke pop in to help or give advice. Rack up enough baddie defeats and Wolverine goes into berserker mode for a short burst of unstoppable fury. This game simply does not baby you. Get hit and there is no invincibility grace period. You just keep losing energy. And except for the final 2 levels, don't expect a boss fight at the end of each stage. Wolverine on NES is a unique spin on the usual superhero games, perfect for fans of the gruff, clawed hero who wants a bit of retro gaming challenge. Demon's Crest. This one on the Super Nintendo is a really cool throwback from the past. Capcom, whose genius is behind hits like Mega Man and Street Fighter, really outdid themselves with this one. They took all their experience in making edge-of-your-seat platformers and went all dark and gothic. You played as Firebrand. Remember him? The red demon from Ghosts and Goblins? Only this time, he's the star of the show. The game was set in this wicked, cool world of magic and demons. Your mission? To hunt down these crests, these insanely powerful stones. Each one you found just amped up your powers. The journey was nothing short of legendary. You hopped through different realms and faced off against massive bosses, and every choice you made led to a different ending. It was a killer mix of hardcore platforming with a sprinkle of RPG elements. Kind of like a Metroidvania game where you kept unlocking new areas as you powered up. Firebrand's abilities were so cool, breathing fire, clinging to walls, transforming into different forms. It was just gameplay gold. Capcom really flexed their design muscles on this one. Playing Demon's Crest was not just gaming, it was an adventure. If you were into NES games and missed out on this, you really missed a classic. It is a nostalgia trip worth taking. Mega Man. Hey, did you know Capcom, the guys who made Street Fighter and Resident Evil, totally rocked the NES with Mega Man back in '87? Yeah, it was their first jump from arcade games to home consoles, and man, did they nail it. Mega Man, or Rockman as they call it in Japan, started this whole epic franchise. So you are playing as this robot-dude Mega Man, and you are up against this evil Dr. Wily and his crew of 6 souped-up robot masters. The cool part, you have to pick which stage to play in any order. Each time you beat a boss, you snagged their special weapon, which was a total game changer for beating other stages. Critics went nuts over it, and honestly, they had every reason to. It wasn't just another platformer, it set the standard for gameplay, story, and graphics. It's still so popular that they keep re-releasing it, and even making a 3D version called Mega Man Powered Up for the PSP. Playing Mega Man on NES was all about blasting through these 6 unique stages, each with its own tough boss. Once you beat them, you get their cool powers, which was super handy for the next levels. Plus, you could go back to levels you finished, making the whole strategy thing even more interesting. Long story short, Mega Man was not just a hit for Capcom on the NES, it was a trailblazer that laid the foundation for a whole series of awesome games. They showed they could rock any platform, not just arcades. Totally a classic. Marvelous verdict. Alright folks, that wraps up our epic journey through the superhero games of the NES and SNES era. From the death and return of Superman to Wolverine, we revisited some of the most iconic titles that many of us grew up with. These games didn't just entertain us, they brought our favorite comic book heroes to life in a way that only 80s and 90s gaming could. We have seen everything from the gritty streets of the Punisher to the zany antics in Boogerman, a pick-and-flick adventure. Each game had its charm, its challenge, and its unique way of making us feel like true superheroes. And who could forget the adventures in TMNT 4 Turtles in Time or the team action in Justice League Task Force. Thanks for joining me on this nostalgic trip. If you loved reliving these classic superhero adventures, hit that like button and subscribe for some more awesome gaming content. Stay tuned in for more trips down memory lane and explorations into the gaming world. Until next time, keep those controllers charged and your capes ready. There is always another adventure waiting in the world of video games.